Tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 12th of November 2024. Final clash. Political parties clash for the final time as the pre-election silence commences 48 hours ahead of the parliamentary poll. Candidates who violate election laws face the risk of losing parliamentary seats, officials warn. Human trafficking. The number of Sri Lankans being trafficked to cyber scam centres in Myanmar is increasing, warns the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. Court summons. Court orders former President and Cabinet of Ministers to provide statements regarding substandard medicine importation. Risky rating. CEB's restructure under the new Electricity Act remains uncertain, especially in light of Sri Lanka's upcoming general election, warns Fitch.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwase denu Sensodyne, then Langamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisang karagathot? Ape Parisang.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I am Tanidu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. In your top story this evening, the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force has reported a rise in Sri Lankans being trafficked to Myanmar to work in cyber scam centres. In a recent warning, the Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force said Sri Lankan citizens, particularly those residing in the United Arab Emirates, are being targeted by human traffickers through false promises of high-paying jobs in the IT sector. According to the latest findings by the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, traffickers are targeting skilled IT professionals by offering seemingly lucrative foreign job opportunities. Victims are often taken to locations such as Dubai under the guise of interviews, only to be illegally transported and coerced into cybercrime operations in Myanmar. Investigations into these cybercrime camps have revealed severe human rights abuses. Detainees report enduring mental and physical torture, including electrocution. The NAHTTF urges the public to exercise caution, avoid travelling abroad on tourist visas for employment, and use only authorised agencies for overseas job placements. Violating these guidelines not only increases vulnerability for trafficking, but also contravenes the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau Act. To combat these trafficking networks, the NAHTTF recommends that the public only use legal channels to seek foreign employment by ensuring employment migration is handled through licensed agencies, report any suspicious activities to authorities, and inform relevant authorities of any Sri Lankan workers who may be in danger or are abroad in similar situations. To report suspicious activities, the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force urges the public to contact them via hotlines 011-210-2570 or 076-844-7700 or through the email address nahtTFSriLanka@gmail.com.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now. Piripum Jeevithekata Oba Samakin Perata Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
Chandurusune Hagen Manape Siga TV Sadha Supiri deal.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Sri Lanka decides 2024.
The 2024 general election to elect the 10th Parliament of Sri Lanka is set to take place in just 2 days on the 14th of November. The Election Commission assures that voters who did not receive an official poll card will still be able to vote as long as they present a valid form of identification. Meanwhile, with the pre-election silence coming into effect from midnight yesterday, officials warned that any candidate found to have violated election law during the silent period will face severe consequences, including the loss of their parliamentary seat if elected.
The 2024 parliamentary election to elect the 10th Parliament of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka will be held in another 2 days. 8,888 candidates are contesting this year's election, while 17,140,354 Sri Lankans are eligible to cast votes. Polling for the parliamentary election will be conducted at 13,421 polling centres across the island from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the 14th of November. The Election Commission says not receiving official poll cards will not be an obstacle for voters to cast their votes.
Even if you did not receive an official poll card, if you possess a valid form of identification, you will be able to cast your vote. A national identity card, a valid passport, a valid driving license, a government pensioner's identity card, a senior citizen's identity card issued to clergy by the Department for Registration of Persons, a letter of proof of identity issued by the Department of Registration of Persons, a temporary identity card issued by the Election Commission to persons with disabilities, or a temporary identity card issued by the Election Commission to all other persons can be produced as proof of identity.
Campaigning for the general election concluded at midnight yesterday, and the pre-election silence is effective until the day of the election.
All forms of election campaigning are prohibited during the pre-election silence. All campaign officers must be disbanded by midnight tonight. Political parties and independent groups can only maintain a single campaign office in each electoral division, and each candidate will also be permitted to maintain one campaign office per electoral division from tomorrow onwards.
The Election Commission also commented on granting leave for employees to enable them to cast votes.
It is essential to grant leave for both public and private sector employees to enable them to cast their votes. If the workplace is located within 40 kilometers of the employee's designated polling center, half a day of leave is to be granted. Similarly, if the distance is between 40 and 100 kilometers, 1 day of leave, and 1.5 days for distances between 100 and 150 kilometers, and 2 days of leave for distances over 150 kilometers must be granted.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka police commented on the security measures in place for the election.
During the past few days, the police received 496 election-related complaints, of which 66 were criminal offences. The remaining 430 complaints were violations of election law. 478 individuals have been arrested, which includes 14 candidates contesting the election. Approximately 64 police personnel will be directly engaged in election-related duties. Another 6,000 personnel are on standby for deployment. Additionally, around 10,000 army personnel will also be on standby. Over 11,000 Civil Defence Force personnel will also be deployed. If a candidate is found to have violated election law, it will cause them to lose their parliamentary seat.
In the meantime, an altercation took place yesterday in Vaunia between the supporters of former Minister Rishad Badiuddin and former State Minister Qadir Mastan prior to the two candidates' final rallies. Former Minister Badiuddin was inside his vehicle during the altercation. The police had dispersed the crowd, and 2 people injured during the fray are receiving treatment at the Vaunia General Hospital. Meanwhile, the officer in charge of the Kochikade police station was arrested by the Colombo North Crime Division of allegations of violating election law. During an operation to remove election-related posters on the 3rd of November, the officer in question had allegedly threatened several police personnel not to remove posters of a certain candidate. A number of special public transportation services will be in operation this week for those travelling home for the election. Meanwhile, all schools and universities across the island will be closed tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in view of the election.
President Anura Dissanayake assures that the NPP government will put an end to Sri Lanka's corrupt political culture and standardise the country's politics. Addressing the final parliamentary election rally of the National People's Power, the head of state requested the people to elect new politicians to parliament during the upcoming election.
The final public rally of the National People's Power aimed at the 2024 parliamentary election was held yesterday in Piliyandala under the patronage of President Anura Dissanayake.
I recently saw that politicians of other parties making various statements during their election rallies to deceive the public. Someone even said that the NPP's downfall will commence following the general election. This statement clearly reflects that other politicians have already acknowledged that the NPP will obtain victory in the parliamentary election. The political parties that are contesting against us in the upcoming parliamentary parliamentary election are a group of individuals who are unable to accept their defeat and to respect the people's mandate.
අපිට විරුද්ධව මේ මැතිවරණයේදී ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න.
මේක දිනන්න ඕන ඡන්දයක් මතක තබා ගන්න. මේ අත්පත් කරගන්න ලද ජයග්‍රහණය කිසිසේත්ම ආපහු හරවන්න බැරි බව මේ ජනතාව සාක්ෂි දරන මේ ඉන්නේ.
It is crucial that we obtain victory in this parliamentary election. The victory gained by the NPP cannot be reversed. It is imperative that the parliament be filled with newcomers. I request the voters to send in new politicians from other political parties if they are planning to cast their votes to other parties. It is imperative that we clean out the parliament. Therefore, I request the public to fill the parliament with NPP members. Sri Lanka's politics should be standardized. The president of the country thinks that he can act accordingly to his will when assumes the president's office. Does this country require such politics? The NPP government will definitely standardize the country's political culture. We will undoubtedly change the existing corrupt politics of the country. The NPP will make the maximum use of this opportunity granted to us and will definitely achieve victory.
Fast track your career from O-Levels with eSoft.
After O-Levels, start your Australian degree in just 8 months with ACBT's Foundation Program. Enroll now before it's too late. Call 071 115 1234 for Colombo or 077 011 3223 for Kandy.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
ප්‍රයිම් ගෲප් ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන ලෑන්ඩ් ලීසින් ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Meanwhile, Sambagi Janabalawege leader Sajith Premadasa asserted that Sri Lanka's agreement with the International Monetary Fund must be amended in the best interest of the country in consultation with the global lender. Addressing the SJB's final public meeting ahead of the parliamentary election, Premadasa went on to say that Sambagi Janabalawege is the only political party capable of successfully renegotiating the agreement.
The final public meeting of Sambagi Janabalawege aimed at the 2024 parliamentary election was held in Alutkade last evening under the patronage of party leader Sajith Premadasa.
වාහන පෙන්වා මතකද කෝදැන් ඒ වාහන නෑ වාහන තියෙනවා ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ ලේකම් කාර්යාලේ මොකටද වාහන ටික තියාගෙන ඉන්නේ මේ 14 වෙනිදා ඡන්දයෙන් පස්සේ ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණේ മന്ത്രിවරුන්ට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ගම්වල ඉඳගෙන වාහනේන් ඒගොල්ලන්ටත් වාහන දෙන්න ඕනේ ඒ වාහන තමයි දැන් තියාගෙන ඉන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ කියපු හැම දෙයක්ම ආපස්සට එනවයි කියන එක මතක තියාගන්න අනුර කුමාර කරන ආණ්ඩුවක් නෑ නන්දලාල් කියන එකයි මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ලේකම් කියන එකයි තමයි අනුර කුමාර කරන්නේ
ජනාධිපතිවරණ සමේ මොනවද වේදිකාවක් පාසා කිව්වේ.
What did they say on political stages during the presidential election? They said they will reduce prices of food items. Did they do so? The government cannot even provide rice at a reasonable price. Queues have once again emerged for coconuts. We request that Anro Dissanayake immediately implement the 33% reduction of electricity tariffs which they promised. They said they will reduce fuel prices. They claim reducing fuel prices will cause people's livelihoods as well as the whole country to collapse. Kindly reduce fuel prices without being enslaved by the fuel price formula. The president surrendered before the IMF. Therefore, the VAT, APIT or payee taxes will not be reduced. They promised government employees salary increments every 6 months. However, now they are saying it is not possible. We as a country will have to amend the IMF agreement in the best interest of the people following discussions with the IMF. The SJB is the only party that can provide leadership to renegotiate a new agreement with the IMF.
අලුත් IMF ගිවිසුමකට නායකත්වය දෙන්න පුළුවන් එකම ගමන තිබෙන්නේ සමගි ජනබලවේගයට අපේ පක්ෂයට.
Leader of Sarva Janabale, Dilip Jayavira, assures to establish a courageous opposition in the country that supports the incumbent government and works towards fulfilling public demands. Addressing Sarva Janabale's final public meeting ahead of the parliamentary election, Jayavira asserted that Sarva Janabale will not cause its supporters to regret their decision to support the alliance.
The final public meeting of Sarva Janabalaya aimed at the 2024 parliamentary election was held in Colombo last evening. The rally was attended by professionals representing various sectors as well as entrepreneurs and Sarva Janabalaya candidates contesting the parliamentary election.
Sarva Janabalaya Nayaka Vyavasayaka Dilip Jayavira Vatuna Rataka Hina Gena Karata Naum
හෙට දිනට එකම අරමුණට විකට සට කපට කිලුටු පටි නොයන්ද එකට යමු පෙරට නොවැටි යලි නිවට
තරුණ අදහසින් වීරයෝ ලෙසින් එක්ව ජය නදින් පෙළ කැසෙමු දෙදින්
අපේ රටේ අනාගතය තීරණය වන්නේ මේ රටේ මිනිස්සු ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙන එකමුතුව අපි ඉදිරියට යන ජාතිකත්වය යන සංකල්පය මත.
The future of this country relies on the concept of nationalism, which unites all of the country's people to develop the country. However, some people had confused nationalism with racism. That is why we established Sarvajana Balaya in order to deliver true nationalism to the people. Following this, we acknowledge that an entrepreneurial nation can be established when the mindset of citizens are innovative and has the ability to manage risk based on the concept of united nationalism. Sarvajana Balaya will create the required environment for this process. The results of the impending general election will decide the future of this country as well as its territorial integrity. As a powerful opposition, we aim to assist the incumbent president in his journey without sabotaging and criticizing his decisions in a traditional manner. Through this, we also intend to assist the general public by fulfilling their needs without putting their livelihoods at risk. We assure our voters that Sarvajana Balaya will not make them regret their decision to support us. We assure you that none of our decisions will put your livelihoods at risk. Our criticism would be positive and we will provide guidance through every step forward. Not only that, but we are ready to share our strategic plan with the incumbent government. I request every voter to exercise their right of franchise in the upcoming general election. Do not neglect this golden opportunity granted to the public to change the country's politics by refraining from casting your votes.
ලැබුණු ස්වර්ණමය අවස්ථාවක් පැහැරහැරීමක් පුණ්‍ය කර්මයක් පැහැරහැරීමක්
National organizer and nationalist candidate of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Namal Rajapaksa assures that an SLPP-led government will ensure that Sri Lanka will not fall prey to the separatist ideology. Addressing the SLPP's final public meeting ahead of the parliamentary election, Rajapaksa went on to assert that the LTTE diaspora is likely to achieve what they could not during the civil war through the incumbent government.
A public meeting organised by Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held in Matugama this evening under the patronage of the party's national organizer and nationalist candidate Namal Rajapaksa.
වර්තමාන ආණ්ඩුව මහා බලාපොරොත්තු වගේම ප්‍රායෝගික නොවන කාරණා බොහොමයක් ප්‍රකාශ කරපු බව දැන් ඔබ දක්වනාසලට වැටහෙනවා.
The people are now aware that the incumbent government made certain promises that are completely unrealistic. During the past, certain people leveled accusations against us. However, as of now, those who made those accusations accepted that those were politically motivated claims made with a lack of understanding. What is the plan of the NPP government to generate more employment opportunities in the country? However, the president in his election rallies often speaks about gaining victory in the general election. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe also said that the country will emerge out of bankruptcy, but we haven't done so yet. We request the government to stop deceiving the public with their lies. They should work first.
එහෙනම් අපි ආණ්ඩුවට කියන්නේ තවදුරටත් රටේ ජනතාවට බොරු කිව්වා ඇති. ඔබ වැඩ කරන්න.
Sri Lanka decides 2024.
The Maligakanda Magistrates Court ordered that statements be recorded from 18 cabinet ministers of the former administration, including former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, regarding the importation of substandard human immunoglobulin vials. The order was issued when the case regarding the distribution of substandard immunoglobulin was taken up before the court. In October 2023, the National Medicines Regulatory Authority revealed that forged documents were found to have been submitted for customs clearance to procure a batch of vials containing substandard human immunoglobulin. Prior to the apprehension of former Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwala, 7 arrests had been made in connection with the alleged drug procurement scam. The former Health Secretary, former Additional Health Secretary, the Director of the Health Ministry's Medical Supplies Division and 3 other officials of the same division, as well as the owner of the company which is said to have supplied the substandard batch of immunoglobulin vials, were among those arrested and placed in remand custody. Meanwhile, one of the suspects in the case, former Deputy Director of the Medical Supplies Division of the Health Ministry, Dr. Tusita Sudarshana, was released on bail when the case was previously taken up on the 6th of May. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeals on the 25th of July ordered the Maligakanda Magistrates Court to release on bail the former Director of the Health Ministry's Medical Supplies Division, Dr. Kapila Wickramanayake, who was also in remand custody. Former Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwala, who was in remand custody for over 7 months, was released on bail on the 11th of September 2024. Against this backdrop, the relevant case filed over the distribution of the substandard batch of immunoglobulin vials to state hospitals was taken up before the Maligakanda Magistrates Court yesterday. During the hearing, Deputy Solicitor General Lakmini Girihagama requested the court to grant permission to record statements from the then Cabinet of Ministers who approved the cabinet paper presented by former Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwala for the importation of the drug in question. Accordingly, the Attorney General's Department informed the court that statements are required from 18 individuals, including former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, former Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, former Ministers Nimal Siripala De Silva, Douglas Devananda, Dr. Susil Premajayantha, Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, Mahinda Amaravira, Dr. Vijay Dasa Rajapaksha, Harin Fernando, Dr. Ramesh Patirana, Prasanna Ranatunga, Vidura Vikramanayaka, Kanchana Vijaysekara, Nasir Ahmed, Roshan Ranasinghe, Tiran Alice, Nalin Fernando and Jagat Pushpakumara. After considering the facts presented, Maligakanda Magistrate Lochani Abe Vikrama ordered that statements be recorded from the 18 then Cabinet Ministers pertaining to the alleged importation of substandard human immunoglobulin vials. Welcome back. Fitch Ratings has affirmed Ceylon Electricity Board's national long-term rating at BB positive with a stable outlook. The agency also affirmed the national long-term rating of CEB's outstanding senior unsecured debentures at BB positive. However, Fitch says success of CEB's restructuring under the new Electricity Act remains uncertain, especially in light of Sri Lanka's upcoming general election.
Fitch Ratings has highlighted that the Ceylon Electricity Board, which provides approximately 73% of Sri Lanka's electricity, is under significant financial strain. The agency said CEB also relies on independent power producers for about 27% of its electricity generation, with these external suppliers largely dependent on imported oil. If CEB defaults, these arrangements could be at risk. Additionally, the Ceylon Electricity Board's default could impact the government's ability to raise debt, as most of CEB's loans are state-backed. Despite these risks, Fitch expects continued government support for CEB, given its crucial role in the electricity provision. Fitch also anticipates ongoing improvements on CEB's profitability, partly due to a new tariff structure implemented in June last year. However, the success of CEB's restructuring under the new Electricity Act remains uncertain, especially in light of Sri Lanka's upcoming general election, which could influence the potential climate. Looking forward, Fitch expects steady growth in electricity demand, changes in the generation mix, and ongoing tariff adjustments to maintain CEB's financial stability. Despite challenges, the government is likely to continue supporting CEB due to its vital role in Sri Lanka's energy infrastructure.
The Colombo Stock Exchange and the U.S. Agency for International Development, together with SLASCOM and the Federation of Information Technology Industry Sri Lanka, hosted a forum titled Unlocking Value via Capital Markets and Funding Options for the IT Sector. The forum was aimed at empowering companies in the ICT sector by exploring alternative funding sources and raising awareness about the process of going public in today's dynamic market environment. Aided by USAID's Catalyze Private Sector Development Initiative, the event covered a range of topics aimed at enhancing investor awareness. The participants also gained knowledge about the regulatory landscape, compliance requirements and going public, and success stories shared by industry leaders. The Colombo Bourse closed in green today as a result of price gains in counters such as John Keells Holdings. The all-share price index climbed 0.88% to settle at 12,988.99 points. The more liquid S&P SL20 meanwhile climbed 0.85% to close at 3,887.16 points. The market turnover crossed 4.2 billion rupees, with the banking sector ending as the top contributor. The food, beverage and tobacco sector was the second highest contributor. Overseas Realty and John Keells Holdings were also included among the top turnover contributors. Foreign participation in the market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. And with that, let's take a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. And with that, here's a look at corporate news in brief. Sri Lanka's Valuable Finance PLC plans to raise up to 3 billion rupees in a debenture issue. The listed, rated, subordinated, unsecured redeemable debentures will be offered at 100 rupees each with an initial issue of 20 million. In a disclosure, the company added that a further 10 million will be issued if the first tranche is oversubscribed. Meanwhile, Hemas Holdings plc stated that Sri Lanka's pharmaceutical sales have started to grow for the first time since the economic crisis in 2022. The company added that this expansion was mainly driven by lower-priced items including diabetic drugs and vitamins. Hemas Holdings highlighted that this trend highlights a shift in consumer preferences toward more affordable pharmaceutical options. In other corporate news, Fonterra Cooperative Group Limited announced its decision to proceed with the sale of its businesses Fonterra Oceania and Fonterra Sri Lanka. The group said they have received meaningful buyer interest in the businesses in scope for divestment. CEO Miles Hirrell said the company has assessed both a trade sale and an IPO as attractive divestment options and will prepare for a sale process that will pursue both options. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.